The wind howled through the dense forest, twisting the ancient trees into grotesque shapes that clawed at the sky. The narrow road wound up the mountainside, disappearing into a thick veil of mist. Alex tightened his grip on the steering wheel, peering through the windshield as the headlights carved weak tunnels of light through the fog. "Are we almost there?" Sarah asked from the passenger seat, her voice a blend of anticipation and unease. She glanced at the GPS on her phone, the screen flickering as the signal weakened. "Just a bit further," Alex replied, forcing a reassuring smile. "The inn should be just around the next bend." In the back seat, Emily and Mark exchanged nervous glances. Emily, a history buff with a penchant for old buildings, had insisted on this weekend getaway at the Silverwood Inn, a remote, centuries-old establishment rumored to be haunted. Mark, ever the skeptic, had agreed to come along more for Emily's sake than out of any real interest. The car rounded the final bend, and there it was, the Silverwood Inn. It stood at the edge of a cliff, its stone walls bathed in the pale glow of the moon. Ivy crawled up its facade, and gnarled trees flanked its sides, their branches swaying like skeletal arms. The inn looked like a relic from another time, forgotten by the world. As they pulled into the gravel driveway, the inn's wooden sign creaked in the wind. The Silverwood Inn, Est 1823. The building loomed before them, its dark windows staring like empty eyes. "This place is something," Mark muttered, stepping out of the car and stretching his legs. He glanced around, shivering as a gust of cold wind cut through his jacket. Emily, on the other hand, was enthralled. "It's perfect," she breathed, her eyes wide with excitement. "Can you imagine the history here? The stories these walls could tell?" Alex retrieved their bags from the trunk while Sarah walked ahead, her footsteps crunching on the gravel path. She reached the large wooden door and hesitated before knocking. Almost immediately, the door swung open with a creak, revealing the innkeeper. Mr. Hawthorne was a tall, gaunt man with sharp features and eyes that seemed to pierce right through them. He wore an old-fashioned suit, its black fabric faded with age, and his thin lips curled into a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Welcome to the Silverwood Inn," he said in a voice that was both warm and chilling. "I'm Mr. Hawthorne, your host. Please come in." The friends followed him into the foyer, a grand but dimly lit space filled with antique furniture and faded tapestries. A large chandelier hung overhead, its crystals tinkling softly in the draft. The air was thick with the scent of aged wood and something else, something metallic. "I trust your journey was uneventful," Mr. Hawthorne inquired, his eyes flicking over each of them in turn. "Uneventful but spooky," Alex said with a chuckle, trying to lighten the mood. "This place is amazing. Feels like stepping back in time." Mr. Hawthorne's smile tightened. "Indeed, the Silverwood Inn has a long and storied history. I'm sure you'll find your stay memorable." He handed them an old-fashioned brass key. "Room 13. Upstairs, first door on the left. Dinner will be served at 8. Please make yourselves comfortable." As they climbed the creaking staircase, Emily whispered to the others, "Did you see the look in his eyes? It's like he knows something." "He's just playing into the haunted inn vibe," Mark said, though he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something off about Mr. Hawthorne. They reached room 13 and unlocked the door. The room was spacious but musty, furnished with a large four-poster bed, an antique dresser, and a fireplace. Heavy curtains framed the windows, and an old, full-length mirror stood in one corner. "Home, sweet home," Sarah said with a nervous laugh as she set her bag down. Emily walked over to the mirror, her fingers brushing the tarnished surface. There's so much history here, she murmured. I can almost feel it. Let's just hope we don't run into any ghosts, Alex joked, though his eyes betrayed a hint of unease. As they began to settle in, none of them noticed the faint, ghostly figure that watched them from the mirror, its eyes filled with sorrow and a silent plea for help. The evening fell into an eerie silence as the friends gathered in the dining room of the Silverwood Inn. A large mahogany table stretched before them, set with fine china and silverware that glinted in the dim candlelight. The atmosphere was both grand and oppressive, the shadows in the corners of the room seeming to whisper secrets of the past. Mr. Hawthorne appeared with a flourish, carrying a tray of steaming dishes. Tonight's menu is a traditional fare, inspired by the inn's early days, he announced, placing plates of roast chicken, root vegetables, and freshly baked bread in front of the guests. His presence was unsettling, his movements almost too graceful, too practiced. The friends tried to enjoy their meal, but an undercurrent of tension marred the evening. Sarah kept glancing over her shoulder, as if expecting to see something lurking in the shadows. Mark, ever the skeptic, focused on his food, refusing to let the inn's creepy ambience get to him. Alex attempted to keep the conversation light, but his jokes fell flat. Emily, however, was lost in thought, her mind turning over the contents of the old journal she had found under her bed. She had only skimmed a few pages, but the story of Sarah and Thomas had gripped her, their tragic love affair echoing through the years. After dinner, the friends decided to explore the inn. The flickering candlelight cast long, distorted shadows on the walls as they moved from room to room. The air was thick with the scent of old books and polished wood, and every creak of the floorboard seemed to resonate through the hallways. In the library, Emily's attention was drawn to a portrait of a young woman with sad, haunting eyes. "This must be Sarah," she whispered, reaching out to touch the faded canvas. "Who?" Alex asked, joining her. "The woman from the journal," Emily explained. "She and her lover, Thomas, were planning to elope, but something terrible happened to them here." Before Alex could respond, a sudden chill swept through the room. The candles flickered violently, and the friends exchanged uneasy glances. "Did you feel that?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. Mark shook his head, forcing a laugh. "It's just a draft. Old buildings like this are full of them." But as they left the library and headed down the corridor, the whispers began. Faint at first, like the rustling of leaves, they gradually grew louder, more distinct. The friends stopped in their tracks, straining to make out the words. "Help us, please." The voice was soft, almost pleading, and it seemed to come from all around them. Sarah clutched Alex's arm, her eyes wide with fear. "Did you hear that?" "Yeah," Alex replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "We all did." Emily turned towards the source of the whispers, her heart pounding in her chest. "We need to find out what's going on," she said, her determination overriding her fear. "These spirits are trying to tell us something." They followed the whispers to a small, dusty parlor at the end of the hall. The room was filled with antique furniture, covered in white sheets that looked like ghosts themselves. In the center of the room stood a grand piano, its keys yellowed with age. Emily approached the piano, her fingers hovering over the keys. "This is where it happened," she said, her voice barely audible. "This is where Thomas was murdered." Suddenly, the whispers ceased, and the room fell into an oppressive silence. The friends stood frozen, their eyes darting around the room. Without warning, the piano began to play by itself, a mournful melody that filled the air with sorrow. The notes echoed through the parlor, each one a reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded within these walls. As the final note hung in the air, the friends knew that they were not alone. The spirits of Sarah and Thomas were still here, trapped in a cycle of pain and longing, and it was up to them to uncover the truth and set them free. With a newfound resolve, Emily turned to her friends. "We need to read more of that journal. There has to be something in there that can help us understand what really happened." The friends nodded in agreement, their fear now mingled with a sense of purpose. They had come to the Silverwood Inn for a weekend getaway, but they were about to embark on a journey into the past, uncovering secrets that had been buried for centuries. Back in room 13, the atmosphere was tense. The old journal lay open on the bed, its pages yellowed and brittle. Emily sat cross-legged, her eyes scanning the elegant, looping handwriting that recounted Sarah and Thomas's ill-fated romance. The others gathered around, the soft glow of the bedside lamp casting long shadows on the walls. "Listen to this," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thomas and I have decided to leave this place. We can no longer live in the shadow of fear and deceit. Tomorrow night, under the full moon, we will make our escape." Sarah leaned in closer, her eyes wide with curiosity. They were planning to run away together. But what happened? Why didn't they make it? Emily turned the page, her fingers trembling slightly. "It says here that Thomas was to meet Sarah in the garden at midnight, but he never arrived. Sarah waited for hours, growing more desperate with each passing moment. Finally, she went searching for him and found him. Dead." A shiver ran through the group, the weight of the story settling over them like a heavy fog. "Who killed him?" Alex asked, his voice tight with tension. Emily shook her head. "It doesn't say. Sarah only wrote that she found him lying by the old well, his eyes wide open, staring into nothing. She knew then that their love was cursed, that they could never be together in this life." Mark, always the skeptic, frowned. "This is all very dramatic, but how do we know any of it's true? Maybe it's just a story." Sarah shot him a look. "Did you not hear those whispers? See the piano play by itself? Something happened here, Mark. Something real." Emily continued reading. "Sarah was heartbroken. She felt that her only escape was to join Thomas in death. The next entry is the last one. She wrote it just before she ended it all." The room fell silent as Emily read Sarah's final words, written with a trembling hand. "I can no longer bear this world without my beloved Thomas. I go now to join him in the afterlife, where we can be together forever, free from the pain and betrayal of this cruel world. If anyone should find this, know that our love was true, and that we were victims of jealousy and hatred. May our souls find peace." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. "It's so sad. They loved each other so much, and yet they were torn apart by something so terrible." Alex put a comforting arm around her. "We need to find out who did this to them. Maybe if we can uncover the truth, we can help their spirits move on." Mark sighed, rubbing his temples. "And how do you suggest we do that? It's been over 100 years. The murderer is long gone, and all we have are these journal entries." Emily closed the journal gently, her expression resolute. "There must be more clues around the inn. We should start with the garden where Thomas was supposed to meet Sarah. Maybe there's something there that can help us." The friends grabbed their flashlights and headed out into the night. The garden was overgrown and neglected, a labyrinth of twisted vines and crumbling statues. The moon cast an eerie glow over the scene, illuminating the path to the old well. "This must be the place," Alex said, shining his flashlight over the ancient stones. As they approached the well, the temperature seemed to drop, and a sense of foreboding settled over them. Emily knelt by the edge, peering into the darkness below. "There's something down there," she whispered, her breath visible in the cold air. Mark handed her a rope. "Be careful. We don't know how deep it goes." Emily secured the rope and began her descent, her flashlight cutting through the inky blackness. The others waited anxiously above, their hearts pounding in their chests. Suddenly, Emily's voice echoed up from the depths. "I found something! It's a locket!" She emerged from the well, clutching a small, tarnished locket in her hand. It was engraved with the initials S and T, and inside, a tiny portrait of Sarah and Thomas, smiling and full of life. "This is it," Emily said, her voice trembling. "This belonged to them. It must have fallen in the well the night Thomas was murdered." Sarah took the locket, her eyes brimming with tears. "They were so happy together. We have to find out who did this to them. They deserve justice." As they stood in the moonlit garden, a whisper floated through the air, soft and sorrowful. "Thank you." The friends knew then that they were on the right path. They had uncovered a piece of the puzzle, and now they had to find the rest. The fate of Sarah and Thomas hung in the balance, and it was up to them to bring the truth to light and finally put their spirits to rest. The next morning, the friends gathered in the inn's dining room for breakfast, their conversation subdued by the weight of the previous night's discoveries. Mr. Hawthorne served them with his usual eerie grace, his eyes glinting with an unsettling knowingness. As they sipped their coffee, Emily spread out a map of the inn she had found in the library. "We need to explore the entire inn," she said. "There might be more clues hidden in places we haven't checked yet." The friends nodded in agreement, their determination solidifying. They split up into pairs, agreeing to meet back in the dining room by noon. Alex and Sarah headed toward the attic, while Emily and Mark took the basement. The attic was a dusty, forgotten space filled with old furniture and trunks. Cobwebs draped over everything like ghostly veils. As Alex and Sarah rummaged through the items, a cold breeze swept through the room, causing Sarah to shiver. "Do you feel that?" she asked, rubbing her arms. "It's freezing up here." "Yeah, it's weird," Alex replied, lifting the lid of an old trunk. Inside, he found a collection of faded letters tied with a ribbon. "Hey, look at this." Sarah took the letters, her eyes widening. "These are from Thomas to Sarah. They're love letters." As they read through the letters, the temperature dropped further, and a sudden gust of wind knocked over a stack of boxes, causing them to scatter across the floor. Down in the basement, Emily and Mark faced their own strange occurrences. The air was damp and musty, and the single light bulb hanging from the ceiling cast eerie shadows. They searched through old shelves and crates, finding little of interest. "This place gives me the creeps," Mark muttered, glancing around nervously. "Me too," Emily agreed, her voice barely above a whisper. She opened a dusty cabinet and gasped. "Mark, look at this." Inside the cabinet was a small, ornate box. Emily opened it to reveal a delicate lace handkerchief embroidered with the initials ST. Alongside it was a blood-stained dagger. Mark's eyes widened. That could be the murder weapon. Before they could examine it further, the light bulb flickered and went out, plunging the basement into darkness. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed around them, and objects began to move on their own, crashing to the floor. "Let's get out of here!" Mark yelled, grabbing Emily's hand and pulling her toward the stairs. Back in the dining room, the friends reconvened, their faces pale and shaken. They shared their findings, the love letters and the blood-stained dagger adding more pieces to the puzzle. "We're definitely dealing with some powerful spirits," Emily said, "and they don't seem happy." Just then, the dining room door slammed shut, and the temperature dropped sharply. Plates and silverware flew off, crashing against the walls. "We need to get out of here!" Sarah screamed, but the door refused to budge. The room was filled with an oppressive, malevolent energy. Emily clutched the locket tightly, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Sarah, Thomas, please, we're trying to help you." The poltergeist activity intensified, and a ghostly figure materialized in the corner of the room. It was Thomas, his face twisted in agony. He reached out a translucent hand, pointing toward the portrait of Sarah that hung on the wall. "Look!" Alex shouted. "The portrait!" They rushed to the portrait and found a hidden latch behind it. Emily pulled it, revealing a secret compartment. Inside was another journal, this one belonging to the innkeeper of the time, Mr. Hawthorne's great-grandfather. Emily read aloud, her voice trembling. It says here that the innkeeper was in love with Sarah, but she only had eyes for Thomas. In a fit of jealous rage, he murdered Thomas and made it look like an accident. When Sarah found out, she was devastated and took her own life. The ghostly figure of Thomas nodded, his expression softening. The poltergeist activity began to subside, and the room grew still. "We did it," Emily said, her voice filled with relief. "We found the truth." But the friends knew their task was not yet complete. They had uncovered the terrible secret that had haunted the Silverwood Inn for generations, but now they had to find a way to lay the spirits to rest and bring peace to Sarah and Thomas. With the inn's dark history finally revealed, the friends felt a renewed sense of purpose. They would not leave until they had freed the tormented souls trapped within its walls. As they prepared for the next steps in their journey, they knew that the true test of their courage was yet to come. The air inside the Silverwood Inn crackled with a charged stillness, as if the building itself held its breath. After the harrowing experience in the dining room, the friends retreated to their quarters, determined to piece together the final parts of the tragic puzzle. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the newfound journal. "There has to be more in here," she murmured, flipping through the brittle pages. As she read, the room around her seemed to fade away. Emily found herself pulled into the past, as if she were no longer a reader but a participant in the events that transpired so long ago. She stood in the very same inn, but it was alive with the sounds of a bygone era. Candlelight flickered warmly against the polished wood, and laughter echoed from the dining hall. Emily watched as a young, beautiful woman entered the room. Sarah. Her face was radiant with joy, unaware of the dark fate that awaited her. Sarah moved gracefully through the inn, her eyes searching for someone. Emily followed her to the garden, where the full moon bathed the scene in a silvery glow. There, by the well, stood Thomas, his expression filled with love and anticipation. They embraced, whispering promises of a future together. But the tender moment was shattered by the sudden appearance of the innkeeper, his eyes burning with jealousy. Emily watched in horror as he confronted the lovers, his rage palpable. A struggle ensued, and before Emily could react, the innkeeper plunged a dagger into Thomas's chest. Thomas fell to the ground, his life slipping away as Sarah screamed, her cries tearing through the night. The innkeeper fled, leaving Sarah alone with her dying love. Emily's heart ached as she witnessed Sarah's despair, the young woman collapsing beside Thomas, her hands stained with his blood. The vision shifted, and Emily found herself in Sarah's room. The grief-stricken woman clutched a letter, her final words, before taking her own life. The sorrow and helplessness in the room were suffocating, and Emily felt a deep connection to Sarah's pain. Emily was jolted back to the present, gasping for breath. Her friends rushed to her side, concern etched on their faces. "Emily, are you okay?" Alex asked, his hand on her shoulder. "I saw it," Emily said, her voice trembling. "I saw everything. The innkeeper murdered Thomas because he couldn't stand the thought of losing Sarah. And Sarah, she couldn't live without Thomas." The friends absorbed the weight of Emily's vision, their resolve strengthened. They knew they had to act quickly to put the spirits to rest. "We need to confront Mr. Hawthorne," Mark said, his usual skepticism replaced by a determined glint. If his ancestor was responsible, he might know how to end this. They descended the grand staircase, their footsteps echoing ominously. The inn seemed to sense their purpose, the shadows deepening as they approached the innkeeper's quarters. Mr. Hawthorne stood at his desk, his back to them. The air grew colder, and the friends felt the presence of the spirits, their eyes watching intently. "Mr. Hawthorne!" Emily called out, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "We know the truth about what happened to Sarah and Thomas." The innkeeper turned slowly, his expression inscrutable. "Do you now?" he said, his voice carrying an edge of menace. "Your ancestor murdered Thomas out of jealousy," Alex said, stepping forward. "And Sarah, she took her own life because she couldn't bear the loss." Mr. Hawthorne's eyes narrowed, and for a moment the friend saw a flicker of something ancient and malevolent in his gaze. "What do you intend to do with this knowledge?" "We're going to set their spirits free," Emily declared, holding up the locket. "They deserve peace." A dark smile twisted Mr. Hawthorne's lips. "Do you think it will be that easy? The curse runs deep in these walls." As he spoke, the room grew darker, and the shadows seemed to come alive, reaching out with ghostly fingers. The friends stood their ground, determined not to be intimidated. "We have to try," Sarah said, her voice unwavering. "For Sarah and Thomas." Mr. Hawthorne's form wavered, and the spirit of the original innkeeper emerged, a twisted reflection of the man before them. His eyes burned with a century of guilt and hatred. "You cannot change the past," the spirit hissed, moving toward them. "Their souls are mine." The friends braced themselves, the air thick with tension. Emily stepped forward, holding the locket aloft. "Sarah, Thomas, if you can hear us, we need your help. Show us how to end this." A soft glow emanated from the locket, and the spirits of Sarah and Thomas appeared, their forms shimmering with ethereal light. They reached out to each other, their love bridging the gap between the living and the dead. "Thank you," Sarah's spirit whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. "We are ready." The innkeeper's spirit shrieked in rage, but the light from the locket grew brighter, engulfing the room. The friends felt a surge of energy, the power of Sarah and Thomas's love breaking the curse that had held them captive. With a final despairing wail, the innkeeper's spirit dissipated, the darkness lifting from the Silverwood Inn. The air grew warmer, and a sense of peace settled over the building. The spirits of Sarah and Thomas smiled at the friends before fading away, their souls finally free. Emily closed the locket, tears streaming down her face. "We did it," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "They're at peace now." As they stood in the now serene inn, the friends knew they had not only uncovered a tragic love story, but it also brought an end to a century-old curse. The Silverwood Inn, once a place of sorrow, was now a testament to the enduring power of love and the bravery of those who seek the truth. The following morning, the friends gathered in the brightened dining room. The oppressive gloom had lifted, replaced by a sense of tranquility. They ate breakfast in relative silence, each lost in their thoughts about the previous night's events. "We did the right thing," Sarah said finally, breaking the silence. "We set them free." "Yeah," Alex agreed, though his eyes showed a flicker of doubt. "But something still feels off. What about Mr. Hawthorne? He seemed strange." Emily nodded. "We need to talk to him again. He might know more about the curse and the inn's history." As they finished their meal, Mr. Hawthorne appeared, his demeanor more subdued than before. He glanced around the room, his eyes lingering on each of them. "I see you survived the night," he said, his tone icy. "And you discovered the truth about Sarah and Thomas." "We did," Emily replied, meeting his gaze. "But there's more, isn't there? This inn holds other secrets." Mr. Hawthorne's expression darkened. "You should leave while you can. This place is not what it seems. The curse runs deeper than you know." Mark frowned. "What do you mean?" "We broke the curse. The spirits of Sarah and Thomas are at peace." The innkeeper shook his head. "Their spirits may be at rest, but the darkness here is ancient, older than the inn itself. It feeds on sorrow and despair. By uncovering the past, you've awakened something far more dangerous." A chill settled over the friends as Mr. Hawthorne's words sank in. "What are we supposed to do?" Alex asked, his voice tinged with frustration. "We can't just leave now." Mr. Hawthorne's gaze softened, a rare hint of compassion in his eyes. "You must be careful. The inn has a way of drawing people in, trapping them. If you stay too long, you may never leave." Sarah's eyes widened. "Are you saying we're in danger?" "Yes," Mr. Hawthorne replied. "I've seen it happen before. Guests who stay too long become part of the inn's history, their souls bound to this place. Leave now, while you still can." Despite the warning, the friends felt a strange pull to stay. The inn's mysteries had gripped them, and they couldn't shake the feeling that their task was not yet complete. "We need to find out more," Emily insisted. "There has to be a way to cleanse this place for good." Mr. Hawthorne sighed, a resigned look on his face. "If you insist on staying, be prepared for what you may find. The darkness here is relentless." Determined to uncover the inn's remaining secrets, the friends split up once again. Emily and Sarah headed to the library to delve into old records and journals, while Alex and Mark decided to explore the hidden nooks and crannies of the inn. In the library, Emily and Sarah pored over musty books and ancient ledgers. They found references to strange occurrences and unexplained deaths dating back to before the inn was built. The land itself seemed cursed, a magnet for tragedy. "Look at this," Emily said, pointing to an old newspaper clipping. "A series of mysterious deaths in the early 1800s. People claim to see shadowy figures and hear disembodied voices." Sarah shivered. "It's like the land is cursed. Maybe that's what Mr. Hawthorne meant." Meanwhile, Alex and Mark explored the basement again, searching for hidden passageways or forgotten relics. The oppressive atmosphere weighed heavily on them, but they pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. As they moved deeper into the basement, they found a hidden door, partially obscured by old crates. Alex pushed it open, revealing a narrow, dark corridor. "Let's check it out," Mark said, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The corridor led to a small underground chamber. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and decay. In the center of the room stood an ancient altar, covered in strange symbols and candles long since burned out. "This must be it," Alex said, his voice echoing in the confined space. The source of the darkness. As they examined the altar, a sense of dread washed over them. The symbol seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, and the air grew colder with each passing moment. "We need to get Emily and Sarah," Mark said, backing away from the altar. "They need to see this." Back in the library, Emily and Sarah had discovered a journal written by one of the inn's earliest guests. The entries detailed strange rituals performed by the innkeeper's ancestors, attempting to harness the power of the land's darkness for their own gain. "We have to stop this," Emily said, her voice filled with determination. "We need to find the others." Reunited, the friends returned to the underground chamber. Emily's eyes widened as she saw the altar, the malevolent energy almost palpable. "This is it," she said, her voice trembling. "We need to destroy this altar. It's the source of the curse." Mr. Hawthorne appeared in the doorway, his expression grave. "Be careful. The darkness will not give up its hold easily." The friends gathered around the altar, their determination unwavering. With Mr. Hawthorne's guidance, they began to dismantle the ancient structure, breaking the symbols and scattering the remnants. As they worked, the air grew colder, and the shadows around them deepened. The darkness fought back, trying to protect its source, but the friends pressed on, their combined strength and resolve overpowering the malevolent force. With a final powerful strike, the altar shattered, the darkness dissipating with a deafening roar. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a serene calm. "It's over," Mr. Hawthorne said, his voice filled with relief. "You've done it. The inn is finally free." As the friends emerged from the basement, the sun broke through the clouds, bathing the Silverwood Inn in a warm, golden light. The curse had been lifted, and the spirits of Sarah and Thomas were truly at peace. They packed their belongings and prepared to leave, the inn now a place of light and tranquility. As they drove away, they felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing they had not only uncovered the inn's dark secrets, but had also brought an end to its long history of sorrow. And as they looked back at the inn one last time, they saw the faint, smiling figures of Sarah and Thomas, waving goodbye. The friends knew that their love had triumphed over the darkness, leaving the Silverwood Inn a place of peace and hope for future generations. The sun hung low in the sky as the friends drove away from the Silverwood Inn, its warm light casting long shadows across the winding road. The oppressive weight that had lingered over the inn had lifted, leaving behind a sense of peace. But as they descended the mountain, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that their work wasn't entirely finished. "Do you think it's really over?" Sarah asked, glancing back at the inn through the rearview mirror. Emily sighed. "I'm not sure. We broke the curse, but there's something that still doesn't sit right with me." Alex nodded in agreement. "Yeah, like how Mr. Hawthorne seemed to know so much. And he never really explained his connection to all this." Mark frowned, his skepticism resurfacing. "What do you mean? We destroyed the altar, didn't we?" Emily shook her head. "It's more than that. I think Mr. Hawthorne knows more than he's letting on. We need to find out the full story." Determined to uncover the truth, the friends decided to stop in the nearest town. They headed to the local library, hoping to find more information about the inn and its history. The librarian, an elderly woman with sharp eyes and a keen sense of curiosity, listened intently as they explained their quest. "The Silverwood Inn, you say?" she mused, tapping her chin. "That place has always been surrounded by rumors and tragedy. But if you're looking for information, you might find something in the town archives. Follow me." She led them to a dusty, dimly lit room filled with old records and newspapers. The friends split up, combing through the yellowed pages and fragile documents. "Look at this," Sarah said, holding up an old newspaper article. "It's from the late 1800s. It talks about a series of mysterious deaths at the inn. It mentions the innkeeper's family being involved in some kind of dark rituals." Emily's eyes widened as she read over Sarah's shoulder. "This matches what we found in the journal. The innkeeper's ancestors were trying to harness the power of the land, but it looks like the curse started even before that." Mark found a faded photograph of a man who looked strikingly similar to Mr. Hawthorne. "This must be his great-grandfather. The resemblance is uncanny." As they pieced together the history, a clearer picture began to emerge. The Hawthorne family had a long, dark connection to the inn and the land it stood on. The current Mr. Hawthorne seemed to be the latest in a line of men who had tried to control the malevolent force dwelling there. "We need to confront him," Alex said, his voice firm. "He knows more than he's telling us." They returned to the Silverwood Inn as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the building in a deep, foreboding shadow. Mr. Hawthorne greeted them at the door, his expression unreadable. "Back so soon?" he asked, his voice smooth. "I thought you'd be long gone by now." "We have questions," Emily said, stepping forward. "About your family and the inn. We know there's more to the story." Mr. Hawthorne's eyes flickered with something dark. "You should have left when you had the chance." As he spoke, the air around them grew colder, the shadows lengthening and deepening. The friends felt a familiar, oppressive force pressing in on them. "Your family has been trying to control the darkness here for generations," Alex said. "But it's time for the truth to come out." Mr. Hawthorne's face twisted into a mask of rage. "You don't understand. This place, it demands a sacrifice. My ancestors tried to control it, to use its power, but it always comes at a cost." Sarah stepped forward, holding the photograph they had found. "Your great-grandfather murdered Thomas because he wanted Sarah for himself, and now you're continuing his legacy." "Enough!" Mr. Hawthorne roared, the shadows around him writhing like living things. "You think you can stop this? The darkness is part of this land. It will never be defeated." The friends stood their ground, their resolve unshaken. Emily held up the locket, its glow faint but steady. "We're not here to defeat it. We're here to free the souls trapped by your family's greed and obsession." The air crackled with energy as the spirits of Sarah and Thomas appeared, their forms radiant with a soft, ethereal light. They reached out to Mr. Hawthorne, their expressions filled with sadness and forgiveness. "You can end this," Sarah's spirit whispered. "Let us go. Release the darkness that binds us all." Mr. Hawthorne's face contorted with anguish. The shadows around him swirled violently, but the light from the locket grew stronger, pushing back the darkness. With a final desperate cry, Mr. Hawthorne collapsed to the ground. The shadows dissolved, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a profound sense of peace. "It's over," Emily said softly, tears streaming down her face. "They're finally free." As the friends watched, the spirits of Sarah and Thomas smiled at them one last time before fading away, their love transcending the darkness that had held them captive for so long. Mr. Hawthorne lay still, his breathing shallow but steady. The inn, once a place of sorrow and tragedy, was now filled with a serene tranquility. The friends knew they had not only uncovered the truth, but had also brought an end to a cycle of pain and suffering that had lasted for generations. As they helped Mr. Hawthorne to his feet, the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, bathing the Silverwood Inn in a warm golden glow. The friends knew that they had accomplished something truly extraordinary. They had revealed the murderer, ended the curse, and brought peace to a place that had known only darkness for so long. And as they left the inn for the final time, they felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that they had made a difference, and that the spirits of Sarah and Thomas were finally at rest. The tranquility that had settled over the Silverwood Inn was short-lived. As the friends gathered their belongings, preparing to leave, an eerie silence fell over the building. The air grew heavy, and a sense of unease crept back into their hearts. Emily looked around, her brow furrowed. Something's not right. We need to find Mr. Hawthorne. He might still be in danger. They rushed back to Mr. Hawthorne's quarters, where they had left him recovering from the confrontation. The door was ajar, and the room inside was dark and cold. Mr. Hawthorne was nowhere to be seen. Where could he have gone? Alex asked, his voice tense. Mark checked the windows, which were still closed and locked. He couldn't have just disappeared. A low, menacing laugh echoed through the hallways, sending chills down their spines. They turned to see the ghostly figure of the original innkeeper, his eyes glowing with a malevolent light. You think you can defeat me? The innkeeper's spirit hissed. I am bound to this place. As long as the inn stands, so will I. The friends stood their ground, their determination unwavering. Emily clutched the locket tightly, the soft glow still emanating from it. We freed Sarah and Thomas. We can free you too if you let us. The spirit's laugh grew louder, more mocking. You cannot free me. I am the darkness that binds this place. Your efforts are futile. Suddenly, the walls began to shake, and the temperature dropped sharply. The friends felt the oppressive weight of the darkness pressing down on them, trying to crush their resolve. We need to find Mr. Hawthorne, Sarah shouted over the noise. He might know how to stop this. As they navigated the trembling hallways, they felt the spirit's presence closing in on them, its anger palpable. They reached the basement, where they found Mr. Hawthorne lying on the floor, unconscious but alive. Mr. Hawthorne, wake up! Emily urged, shaking him gently. His eyes fluttered open, filled with pain and regret. You must destroy the inn, he gasped. It's the only way to end this. The friends exchanged worried glances. Destroying the inn was a drastic measure, but they knew it was the only way to ensure the darkness would be vanquished forever. How do we do it? Alex asked, his voice firm. There is a secret passage in the basement, Mr. Hawthorne explained weakly. It leads to the foundation. Set fire to the support beams. The inn will collapse, and the darkness will be buried. With a renewed sense of purpose, the friends helped Mr. Hawthorne to his feet and made their way to the hidden passage. The oppressive atmosphere intensified, the spirit's rage manifesting in violent gusts of wind and shadowy apparitions. They reached the foundation, where the ancient support beams loomed before them. Emily handed Sarah the locket. We need to do this together. As they prepared to set the fire, the innkeeper's spirit appeared, his form towering over them. You cannot destroy me, he roared, his voice shaking the very walls. But the friends were resolute. They lit the beams, the flames quickly spreading and consuming the dry wood. The innkeeper's spirit screamed in fury, his form wavering and distorting in the heat. You think this will save you? He snarled. The darkness will never die. The flames roared higher, the heat becoming unbearable. The friends retreated up the passage, helping Mr. Hawthorne along. The inn shook violently, the walls cracking and splintering. They emerged from the basement just as the flames reached the upper levels. The Silverwood Inn, once a place of sorrow and darkness, was now a blazing inferno. The friends watched from a safe distance as the building collapsed in on itself, the darkness consumed by the flames. As the last of the inn crumbled, the oppressive atmosphere lifted completely. The sky brightened, and a sense of peace settled over the land. The friends knew that the darkness had finally been vanquished. Mr. Hawthorne, weak but grateful, turned to them. "Thank you. You freed us all." Emily nodded, her eyes filled with tears of relief. "It's over. The curse is finally broken." As they stood together, watching the ashes of the Silverwood Inn settle, they knew that they had not only ended a cycle of pain and suffering, but it also ensured that no one else would fall victim to the darkness that had haunted the inn for centuries. The friends left the site, their hearts lighter, knowing they had achieved something truly extraordinary. They had faced the darkness head-on and emerged victorious, their bonds of friendship stronger than ever. And as they drove away, they felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that the spirits of Sarah, Thomas, and even the tormented innkeeper were finally at peace. The Silverwood Inn, once a place of terror, was now nothing more than a memory, its dark legacy extinguished forever. As the sun set on the smoldering remains of the Silverwood Inn, the friends drove back to town, the events of the past few days weighing heavily on their minds. The countryside rolled past their windows, a serene backdrop that contrasted starkly with the turmoil they had just endured. They decided to spend the night at a modest motel on the outskirts of town, needing rest before heading home. The motel, in stark contrast to the inn, was modern and unassuming, its bright lights a welcome change from the dim, haunted corridors they had left behind. In their shared room, the friends sat in a circle, the weight of their experiences hanging in the air. Emily broke the silence, her voice soft but resolute. "We did something incredible. We freed the spirits and ended the curse, but I can't help feeling like there's more we need to do." Alex nodded. "We need to make sure the truth is known. The story of Sarah and Thomas, the darkness that plagued the inn. People should know what happened." "Agreed," Sarah said. "But how do we do that? It's not like we can just walk into town and tell everyone the inn was haunted." Emily thought for a moment. "We could write about it. Document everything we found and experienced. If we publish it, people will know the truth. And maybe it will prevent something like this from happening again." Mark, who had been silent, finally spoke up. "I think that's a good idea. We have the journal, the letters, and our own accounts. It could make a compelling story." The friends spent the next few hours outlining their story, each adding their perspective and details. Emily took the lead in writing, her passion for history and storytelling driving her to capture every nuance of their harrowing journey. In the following days, they reached out to local historians and reporters, sharing their findings and the evidence they had gathered. The story of the Silverwood Inn quickly gained attention, capturing the imaginations of those who read it. The townspeople, once skeptical, began to understand the depth of the tragedy that had unfolded in their midst. As their story spread, the friends felt a sense of closure. They had not only freed the spirits trapped by the inn's dark history, but it also ensured that their stories would not be forgotten. The tale of Sarah and Thomas became a symbol of enduring love, transcending the darkness that had sought to destroy it. One evening, as the friends gathered at Emily's apartment to celebrate the completion of their manuscript, they received an unexpected visitor. An elderly woman, her eyes bright with curiosity, introduced herself as Margaret, a distant relative of Sarah. "I read your story," she said, her voice filled with emotion, "and I wanted to thank you. Sarah was always a family legend, but no one knew what truly happened to her. You've given our family peace." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she hugged Margaret. "Thank you for coming. It means a lot to us." Margaret smiled, her expression one of relief and gratitude. "Sarah and Thomas's love was strong enough to transcend death. You've done them a great service by telling their story." As Margaret left, the friends felt a profound sense of accomplishment. They had not only uncovered a tragic love story, but had also brought peace to the descendants of those involved. With the publication of their manuscript, the story of the Silverwood Inn reached a wide audience. Readers were captivated by the haunting tale and the bravery of the friends who had faced down the darkness. The inn, now reduced to ruins, became a place of pilgrimage for those who believed in the power of love and the importance of uncovering the truth. Months later, the friends returned to the site where the Silverwood Inn once stood. The land was peaceful, nature beginning to reclaim the space where the building had been. Wildflowers bloomed amidst the rubble, a testament to the renewal that had taken place. As they stood together, looking out over the tranquil landscape, Emily spoke softly. "We did it. We brought peace to this place." Alex nodded, his arm around Sarah. "And we told their story. It won't be forgotten." Mark, ever the skeptic turned believer, added, "It's amazing what we can achieve when we face our fears and stand together." The friends left the site, their hearts lighter, knowing they had made a lasting impact. The story of the Silverwood Inn, once shrouded in darkness, was now a beacon of hope and love. They had faced the unknown, uncovered the truth, and brought peace to restless spirits. And in doing so, they had forged unbreakable bonds of friendship and courage that would last a lifetime.